Masechet Avoda Zara Daf Vav Ibaya Lehu Shilosha Yamim Hen Ve'edehem or Dilma Hen Belo Edehem. A question about the law in the Mishnah. When the Mishnah says that 3 days before an idolatrous holiday one may not do business with them, does that 3 days, does that mean including the holiday itself or besides the holiday itself? In other words, is it 3 days altogether, 2 days before the holiday and the holiday, inclusive? Or is it 3 days that before the holiday and then also the holiday itself, a total of 4 days? Tashema. Rabbi Ishmael Omer, Shelosha lifnehem u'shlosha la'acharehen asur. Isal kadatech hen ve'edehen. Rabbi Ishmael, Yom edehen chashib lehu meikara ve'chashib lehu lebasof. Let's try to bring a proof from a Mishnah coming up on the next daf, where Rabbi Ishmael says, not only is it 3 days before the holiday, but also 3 days after the holiday, one may not do business with the idolaters. Now, if you say that it's inclusive of that day, in other words, 2 days before plus that day, then, according to the Rabbi Ishmael, the day of the holiday itself is going to do double duty because the 3 days before means 2 days before and the holiday. That means when he says 3 days after, it means only 2 days after, including the holiday itself. So that doesn't fit with Rabbi Ishmael's words when he says 3 days before, 3 days after. That sounds a lot more like 7 days altogether. Otherwise, why would it be repeating? He should say 3 days before, that's what the Mishnah says, including the holiday. Then you could say, and 2 days after. So it doesn't really sound like it's inclusive. And the answer is, I did it. No, Rabbi Ishmael was copying, continuing the style of the Mishnah our Mishnah, since our Mishnah in Tanakama says 3 days before, although that means including the holiday. Rabbi Ishmael didn't want to break with the style and say, and 2 days after. Rather, he wanted to continue the style. And so he says, 3 days before and 3 days after, even though, in fact, it's only 5 days altogether. So we could fit Rabbi Ishmael's words in that, according to that view. But now another challenge, according to Rabbi Ishmael, Tashema, Damar Rav Tachlifa bar Avdimi Amar Shemuel, Notzrim, Lidibre Rabbi Ishmael, Leolam Asur, V'yisakadatech hen ve'edehen ha'ika arba'ah v'chamisha deshareh. So Shemuel said that Christians, according to Rabbi Ishmael, one would never be allowed to do business with them because there's a Christian holiday every Sunday. And then if you say 3 days before and 3 days after, well, that's all the other days of the week. And therefore, that one is not permitted to do business with Christians ever. That was Shemuel's opinion. Shemuel said, yeah, in fact, that's the law. According to Shemuel, you can never do business with Christians. Obviously, according to Shemuel, when you say 3 days before, it means 3 days, not including the holiday. That's how you, and 3 days after. So that's how you get 7. That Shemuel is saying that within Rabbi Ishmael. Now, if you say that 3 days includes the holiday, that would include Sunday. Well, then you'd only be prohibited from Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and then Sunday counts again, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday. So all those days would be prohibited. But Wednesday and Thursday, those would be permitted. So Shemuel's statement would not make sense within Rabbi Ishmael that all the days are prohibited if you think that's inclusive. So isn't that a proof that it has to be besides that day? 3 days before besides the day and 3 days after besides that day. 7 days altogether. So that's a good proof, right? In fact, we agree. If you're going to follow Rabbi Ishmael, then Rabbi Ishmael certainly says it's 3 days before, not including the holiday, and 3 days after, not including the holiday. Since we said this, we don't have to bother with the more difficult reading of Rabbi Ishmael that we said before. Okay, so the question wasn't within Rabbi Ishmael. For sure, Rabbi Ishmael says it's exclusive. The question is, according to Rabbanan, our Mishnah, that says only 3 days before is prohibited, but 3 days after is permitted. What about that? We don't have an answer yet. Amar Ravina Tashema, Veluhen edehen shel goyim, kalanda, Satrunya Ukratesim. V'amar Rav Chanin bar Arava, Kalanda Shemona Yamim Achar Tekufa, Satrunya Shemona Yamim Lifnei Tekufa, V'simanach Achor V'kedem Sartani. Let's bring a proof from a Mishnah coming up that says these are the holidays of the non-Jews. These are all Roman holidays. They are pagan, idolatrous holidays, and they're called Calenda, Saturnalia, and Cratesis. And to explain them, Rav Chanin bar Rava says, Calenda is an 8-day holiday that's after the winter solstice. Saturnia is an 8-day holiday that comes before the winter solstice. And if you want a mnemonic to remember which one is which, remember this pasuk that says Achor vakedem. Achor is achad, after. Kedem is before. So remember that the one that's after comes first, and the one that's before comes second. So in other words, on the list, you say Calenda and Saturnalia. Calenda, although it's mentioned first in the list, is actually talking about the days after the winter solstice, and Satrunya, even though it's mentioned second, is the Kedem, is talking about the 8 days before. Okay, that's the learning about the holidays. And now here's the proof. If you think that the 3 days are inclusive of the holiday itself, so it's really 2 days and then the holiday itself, then, or in this case, it should be 10 days. 10 days, because that would be 8 days of the holiday. Each of these holidays are 8 days, plus 2 days before, 10 days altogether. If you say that 3 days does not include the holiday, then that's totally fine, because we could say 3 days is not including the holiday, and this Mishnah here that says Kalenda Satrunya, these are the holidays, and they are 8-day holidays. That's talking about the holiday itself. So there's 2 separate time periods. The holiday itself, on which, of course, is prohibited from doing business with the idolaters, and the 3 days is separate. That's the days before. So if you keep them separate, then it makes sense why here it says 8. These are 8-day holidays. But if you say that the 3 days are inclusive, then it's inclusive of all the days of however long the holiday is. And these holidays are not just 1 day, but rather 8 days. So instead of saying 3 days, 2 days plus the holiday, if it's a 1-day holiday, here you should say 10 days, because it's really 2 days before plus all 8 days. But the Mishnah doesn't say that, so isn't that a proof that it's exclusive of the day of the holiday itself? And the answer is not necessarily. Tana, kule kalenda chad yomahu chashiv leh. Could be that the Tana is considering all of the Kalenda holiday and all of the Saturnalia holiday as 1 day. It's saying 1 time period. So when it says 3 days before the holiday, it's including the holiday. And if it's a 1-day holiday, then it'll be 1 day. If it's a 5-day holiday, or whatever, however long the holiday is, that's included in the 3rd day of the 3 days that we say it's prohibited. And so we're considering all that like 1 time period. Amar Rav Ashe, Tashema lifnei edehen shel goyim shelosha yamim. V'yisal kadatech hen ve'edehen litnei edehem shel goyim shelosha yamim. Rav Ashe asks a question from our Mishnah. Tries to bring a proof from our Mishnah that says before the holidays of non-Jews, 3 days. Now, if you think that hen ve'edehen, that the holiday is included within those 3 days, then you could just say that the festival of the non-Jews is 3 days. In other words, it's a 3-day period. Put it all together as one. Why would you say before the holiday is 3 days? Just say the prohibited time is 3 days altogether. The language of before 3 days, before the holiday, sounds like it's independent of the holiday. And if you say, oh, I know, we didn't want to say that the period is 3 days altogether, because then you would not be confused and think maybe it's the first day of those 3 days is the holiday, and then the 2 days after. So in order to clarify that it's the 2 days before, that's why it says 3 days before the holiday, in order to clarify that. That's why it says it in that unusual way, rather than just say 3 days are the prohibited days. But in that case, to make it clearer, you could have just said, Litnei edam shel goyim shelosha yamim lifnehem. Then you could say the period of the prohibition of doing business on the holiday of the non-Jews is 3 days before it. So then that would be clear. It's the day plus the 2 days before. So therefore, it would be much clearer if you wanted to include the day plus 2 before, you could have a phrase that is much clearer by saying 3 days before the holiday and not day, not a phrase that is clearer, that is inclusive. That means that, in fact, it's 3 days independent of the holiday. Ela shema mina hen belo adehen shema mina. 3 days before is not including the holiday itself. It's going to be 3 days before, plus however long the holiday is, those days also will be prohibited. Ibaya lehu mishum harvacha or dilma mishum v'lifnei iver lo titen michshol. And now to the heart of the matter, which we've been discussing here and there, but here's the main question. What's the reason why you can't do business with them for 3 days before the holiday? Is it because they're going to profit? And if they have a profit after you do a business deal, whatever it is, buying or selling, you're happy because you did the deal, and now you're going to give them happiness, you're going to give them profit, and they're going to be joyous, and they're going to give thanks to their God on the holiday. Therefore, don't do any business with them, so that in order not to give them inspiration of joy to thank their God. Is that the reason? Or is it because don't put a stumbling block before the blind, and specifically if you sell him an animal, then he will use that animal for an idolatrous sacrifice? Is it more directly about the sacrifice and you're enabling him? Otherwise, if you don't sell it to him, maybe he won't find an animal and then he won't be able to give the sacrifice. So don't put a stumbling block. Or is it more general in terms of his joy and giving thanks? What will be a practical difference between these two explanations? Difference would be if the non-Jew already owns an animal. If you say it's because of joy, it would still be prohibited, because by doing a business deal, then he's going to be happy and he's going to give thanks. So it will still be prohibited from doing any business. But if you say it's because of a stumbling block, if he has an animal already, then there's no stumbling block, because he could get it. He could offer his own animal as a sacrifice. So he already has the means to do it. I'm not enabling him by selling him another animal. So in that case, if that was the reason, and he already has another animal, then it would be permitted to sell him an animal even 3 days before the holiday. Now we question this assumption that if the non-Jew already has an animal, then that would be permitted, according to Mishum Iver, lo titen michshol. V'hatanya, Amar Rabbi Natan, minayin shelo yoshit adam kos shel yain lenazir ve'ever menachai libnei Noach. And the challenge is from this baraita of Rabbi Natan. It asks, how do you know that you should not extend a cup of wine to a nazir, or ever minachai, which is prohibited, one of the Shem Mitzvot Bnei Noach, to a non-Jew? And you can extend it to them and give it to them, encourage them to eat this thing that's prohibited from them. This is not permitted. Why? Don't put a stumbling block in front of the blind by enabling them to do this sin. Now, in both of these cases, even if you did not extend the wine to a Nazir, he can go and get it himself. Like, it's right there. You're just bringing it from this side of the table and passing it to him to the other side of the table, but he can get up himself or reach his hand and take it himself. So actually, when I'm not enabling the Nazir in this case, maybe I'm encouraging him a little by saying, "Here, why don't you have this?" But it's not enabling. He can do it. He can do it himself. Yet it's prohibited because of lifnei iver. So if we go back to our case, that should be the same thing. Even if he has an animal to sacrifice, still it should be prohibited from me giving him an animal, because I'm giving him some more encouragement. Oh, here's another animal, in case maybe he feels bad about killing his other animal. So I'm giving him some encouragement. I'm not enabling, but even though I'm not enabling, I'm only encouraging. It still is prohibited, and therefore this is not enough kamina. According to either explanation, even if he has another animal, it would be prohibited. So the answer is no. This here case of the Braita with the Nazir is talking about where the Nazir is on the other side of a river, and the Nazir cannot reach it on his own. He can reach halfway across the river, but he can't get all the way. And then I go and I hand it to him. I extend myself halfway of the river, so now I am enabling him. Beforehand he couldn't. He's like, "Oh, I really want to drink that wine," but he can't get it. And I allow him to do it, that he couldn't have done it otherwise. So that's what it's talking about. That's the case of lifnei iver. And so too, the same thing is here. that the animal, if he doesn't have one, then he can't make a sacrifice. So if he doesn't have one, then it's prohibited. But if he has one already, then in fact it would be permitted to sell an animal. And this in fact is a precise reading of the Braita, because the Braita says do not extend the wine to him, meaning extend it beyond the river, because he can't get it. It doesn't say lo yiten. Yiten would just to give it to him, but that would be physically he could go get it himself. It doesn't say that, rather extend. So one violates lo lifnei ivei lo titen michshol only if the person could not have done it himself, and I'm enabling him to do it now, and not simply encouraging him. Now, question: what if someone did he violated the law and he did make business with a non-Jew and he sold him an animal, and now I sold the animal for $1,000. Now I have $1,000. Am I allowed to use that money? B'di'avad. Now I did it. Mai Rabbi Yochanan Amar Nasa v'natan asur. Resh Lakish Amar Nasa v'natan mutar. It's machloket. Rabbi Yochanan says that money that I made from the business is prohibited, and Resh Lakish says it's permitted to use it. I violated the law, but now that I have the money, I can use it. Itibe Rabbi Yochanan Resh Lakish. Rabbi Yochanan challenges Resh Lakish, and he says Edehen shel goyim nasa v'natan asurin. Here's a braita that says on the holidays of the non-Jews, if one did business with them, it's prohibited from using that profit. My love, lifne edehen. Doesn't that mean also before their holiday? See, the braita just says edehen. So Rabbi Yochanan says, doesn't mean that mean before the holiday, and it says asurin. How could you say Resh Lakish that it's mutar? And Resh Lakish answers la edehen davka. This braita is only talking about if you do business on the day itself of the holiday, then you cannot use the proceeds. But b'di'avad, if you do business before the holiday, then it's okay to use the money. Ikad Amri, another version of this discussion. Iti Rabbi Shimon ben Lakish Rabbi Yochanan. We're flipping it around. It was actually Resh Lakish that asked Rabbi Yochanan. Edehen shel goyim nasa v'natan asur. Edehen in lifnei edehen la. The Braita says that on the day of the holiday, if you do business with them, it's prohibited from using it. So Resh Lakish says that means precisely only on the holiday is it prohibited. But if it was before the holiday, then there's no prohibition, and you could use the money. So how are you going to explain that, Rabbi Yochanan? And his answer is Tana, Idi v'idi edehen kari le. That Braita calls both the day of and the days before the holiday itself. Like we were saying earlier in the previous sugya, that you can say edehen could mean both the holiday itself, and it could mean the time period of the prohibition of doing business. Tanya kivated Resh Lakish. There's a baraita that supports Resh Lakish that says permitted. Amru asur laset v'latet imahem lo asru ela b'davar hamitkayem ava davar she'eno mitkayem lo. Baraita says when the Mishnah says one is prohibited from doing business with them 3 days before, that's only something that will last 3 days. Let's say it's 3 days before. So if it's like something canned, something that will a dried fruit that will last 3 days, that's prohibited because he will put it to the side and use it on his holiday. But if it's something that is not going to last for 3 days, if it's ice cream and they didn't have freezers, well, they couldn't have made ice cream. But anyway, let's say they had it and it's not going to last 3 days, then he's going to eat it on that day itself. There's no way he can save it for his holiday. So since he can't save it for his holiday, then you can sell that to him. And the Braita continues and says, and even if it's something that does last a long time and that he will use on the holiday, bidi avad, if you already did the business and you made $1,000, you're permitted to use it. There you go. That's a proof for Resh Lakish. Another Braita, Taneh Rav Zavid b'debe Rabbi Oshaya, dabar she'en mitkayem ochrin lahem, aval en lokhin mehen. Here Rabbi Oshaya said from the school of Yeshua, they teach that if it's something that doesn't last long, you can sell it to them, but not buy it from them. You can sell him the ice cream because there's no way he can use it. It was not going to last until the holiday. It's going to melt right away, so you can sell it to him. But you cannot buy ice cream from him because although you're going to eat it right away, you're going to give him money. And then he's going to use that money to buy something, an animal or something that he will enjoy on the holiday. So there's a difference between buying and selling. And now a story. Ahu mina'a. Tishdar le dinara. It was a certain heretic that sent this dinar dinar from Caesarea, special dinar as a gift to the Yehuda Nesi'ah, and he did it on the day of the heretic's holiday. Havaya Tib Resh Lakish Kameh. The Yehuda Nesi'ah is the grandson of the Yehuda Nasi. So that's why he's the generation of Resh Lakish, second generation Amorah. And so Resh Lakish was sitting before him as a student. Amar Hechi Abid. The Yehuda says, what should I do? Eshkele Azil Umodeh. If I accept it, then he's going to be so happy that about this deal. Even though it sounds like it's a gift, but even sometimes giving a gift makes you happy. Oh, see, I gave a gift to that person. Now he's going to owe me a favor in the future. So if I accept it, he's going to go thank his God for it. And then I'm aiding and abetting or inspiring idolatry. I don't want to do that. La Eshkele Havyale Eba. If I don't accept it from him, then it's going to cause hatred, and maybe he'll go and cause a pogrom and tell on me on the government, and we don't want to cause hatred for no reason. Amale Resh Lakish tol uzroko tol abor befanav. Resh Lakish says, I have an answer. Go and throw it into a pit in his presence to show that you're not going to get any benefit from it. And so, just throw it out. And that way he won't be happy to his God. Amad, kol sheken dahav. He says, if I do that, then that certainly will be enmity. That's even worse. It's better to just not accept it. He says, thanks, but no thanks. I don't need it. At least you can reject it politely. If I take it and throw it into the garbage, that's even more of an affront to him, and certainly that will increase enmity. And the answer is, Resh Lakish says, no, I meant kilachad yad hu deka'amina. I meant do it in an unusual manner. Do it like inadvertent, as if it's a mistake. Take the coin, and they'll say, oh, what a nice coin, and then, flip it like you're going to catch it, and then, oops, it fell off the cliff. And so make it look like a mistake, and that way he won't be happy, because he's not going to go be happy. Oh, see, I gave him something, he's going to enjoy it, now he owes me one. He's going to say, oh, well, that's a shame. I gave him this gift, and now it's gone. So he's not going to be happy, and that way I didn't accept it, but I also didn't reject it. It was just looked like an accident. And so that way you resolve the problem. So it's a very diplomatic solution. We can learn from this what this phrase means from this kilachad yad, literally the back of the hand. Sometimes in various halachot it would be permitted in the case of an emergency to do something on Shabbat or other cases kilachad yad. So it doesn't only mean with the back of your hand. It means doing it in a way that is inadvertent, that seems like it's not on purpose. Like you just do it, oops, even though you're planning on doing it, but by doing it in an inadvertent way, so that decreases the level of the prohibition. So just like here, it decreases the level of affront that it would give to the heretic. So by doing something that is not purposeful, you're showing, I don't want to do this on purpose, so you're showing one's reluctance to do it. So that's part of what kilachad yad means. Lashilan v'dishol mehen v'chule. The Mishnah taught that one may not lend items or borrow items to and from idolaters near the time of their holiday. We understand why you cannot lend them something, because they are benefiting. They said, oh, look at this new item that I borrowed that now I can use, and they're going to be happy, and if they're happy, they're going to thank their God. And we don't want to inspire them to perform idolatry. But if we borrow from them, then they don't have the item anymore. So then they'll be said, oh, where's my item? Oh, I had to lend it out. So it should be permitted to borrow from them. Amar Abaye, Abaye says, really, it should be okay to borrow from them, but the rabbis made a gezerah. If we borrow from them, then we're going to think, oh, that's allowed, so I guess to lend items to them is also allowed. So we make a gezerah, just no borrowing and no lending across the board. Make it easier. Rava, however, says no. Even borrowing is something that they will be happy with, because they will say, oh, look, this Jew needs my help. He needs my hammer. See, he can't do without it. And then he will go and thank his God for the fact that there's someone that's needier than he is. And so either way, he will be thankful. Same discussion regarding borrowing and lending money. We understand why you can't lend money to an idolater, because then he's getting profit. He's going to be so happy. Oh, look, it's $1,000 that now I can use. But to borrow from an idolater, why should that be prohibited? He's losing the money, so it should be okay. Abaya says here also a gezerah, don't borrow money from them because then you may lend money to them. So it's confusing. Therefore, just prohibit everything. Rava Amar Kulam Mishum Ta'zil Modeh Lehu. Rava says no. Here also, even if the non-Jew is lending out the money, he will be happy. Oh, look, a Jew needs my help. He's down and out. I have more money. And he needs me to lend him. So either way, he may use that to inspire him to pray to his God. To pay back a loan and to receive payment of a loan from idolaters are both not allowed. We understand why the Jew cannot pay back a loan before the holiday, because then he's getting money. He's going to be so happy. I got my loan paid back. But to receive payment of a loan from an idolater should be allowed because he's losing money. Abaye says here also, really you should be allowed to receive payment from an idolater for a loan, but we make a gezerah. If you receive payment, you might think that paying him also back would be allowed. So we make a gezerah across the board. Rava says, no, he'll be happy about that also. The fact that he has enough money that he can pay back a loan. And even though right now, okay, it's hard, you have to give $1,000, but then he walks away and says, oh, I'm so glad that I'm finished with that debt. So he will be happy. Now I need all these cases in the Mishnah because I couldn't learn one from the other. If you say doing business, buying and selling, I would say understand that's not allowed because the non-Jew is getting benefit. He's getting profit. If he sold something, he's getting profit of the sale that he made, or he's getting an item that he bought. But to borrow an item from him, where he's just, that's it, he gave away his hammer, he lent it out, now he doesn't have it, maybe I would think that's okay before the holiday, because he's not going to be happy that he doesn't have it for that time, and that's why I need the Mishnah to say, lending also is not, borrowing from them is also not allowed. And if you say lending an item, borrowing an item from him, because that matter is significant. Oh, see, the Jew needed my help with this hammer, and so he's going to go give thanks. But to lend out money, then the idolater will just feel bad that he had to give away $1,000, lend out $1,000, but now he doesn't have it, and maybe he won't be happy about that. Amad tubla hadrezuzeh, because he'll say, "Oh, I gave the money out. I might not get the money back." With a hammer, you can go say, "Oh, that's my hammer. I'm going to get it back." But when you lend out money, then you never know you can get it back. So maybe he'll be not be happy that he lent out the money. So the Mishnah needs to teach us that case also, that even though he's lending out money, he still will be happy. Oh, see, the Jew needed my money, and he'll thank his idolatrous God. And if you say only that you can't borrow from an idolater, that's because the idolater says, oh, I can always get the money back because I'll force him. I'll do whatever I have to do, break his legs, and I'll get my money back. So that's why he's happy that he was the Jew needed him, and he knows he'll get the money back. And so, in the meantime, he will give thanks. But to collect money from an idolater, if a Jew collects money for a loan from the idolater, so now he's giving away money, and it's not going to come back. Unlike in the beginning of a loan, if an idolater gives money to a non-Jew, he says, oh, that money's going to come back, and I'll get it back one way or another. So then he's happy. But when he has to pay a loan, and that's it, he's giving $1,000 to pay back the loan, and that's it, now he's out of that money, and it's not going to come back because it's the end of the loan, not the beginning of borrowing. So then he might feel pain. But and he won't thank his God for that. But the Mishnah teaches that also he would give thanks for, because he's happy to get rid of the debt. He's happy that he has enough money to pay down the debt. And so we need all these cases because you cannot assume one from the other. Rabbi Yehuda in the Mishnah disagrees with Tanakama and says that a Jew can collect repayment of a loan from a non-Jew because the non-Jew is just giving you the money. And so the Jew's happy he got paid back, and the non-Jew loses money. So he's not going to be so happy and thankful for that. Are you trying to tell me that Rabbi Yehuda does not have the concept that even though he is unhappy now, distressed now when he actually pays, but he'll be happy afterwards. See, Tanna Kama said that you're not allowed to collect money from the idolater, because even though it's painful to take the money out of your wallet and give it, but after a few minutes, then you walk away and say, oh, I'm so happy that I'm done with that debt. So that's why, according to Tanna Kama, he still will give thanks. Rabbi Yehuda says you're not allowed to collect the debt. Why not? Does he not have this concept that even though he's distressed now, he will be happy after time, and we don't want him to be happy after a few minutes? V'atanya, Rabbi Yehuda Omer, Isha lo tasud b'moed, mipnei shenivul hu la. Rabbi Yehuda seems to say the opposite in a baraita, where he says a woman should not put lime on her skin. Lime would remove bodily hair and make the skin soft. But while the lime is on, it looks bad, like that, those face masks that people wear. So it looks bad in the meantime. So during Chol HaMoed, she should not put it on because she looks bad. So that's not appropriate for the festival, for the happiness of Chol HaMoed. מודה רבי יהודה, בסיד שיכולה לקפלו במועד, שתופלתו במועד, אף על פי שמסירה עכשיו, שמחה היא לאחר זמן. However, Rabbi Yehuda agrees that if it's a type of lime that she doesn't have to leave on so long, but she can take it off during Chol HaMoed, then she's allowed to put it on Chol HaMoed and take it off during Chol HaMoed, because even though it's painful in the meantime for those couple of days during Chol HaMoed when she's not going to look nice, but she's happy because she will look even better afterwards. So we see here that that's considered okay during Chol HaMoed. It's considered enjoyment, even though it's short-term distress. We look at the longer term happiness. So we see that Rabbi Yehuda does have this concept. Why not apply it also to the case of the non-Jew pays back, where you have short-term distress, but long-term happiness? And Rabbi Yehuda here, in the case of the lime and the woman, does consider that to be happiness and therefore permitted on Chol HaMoed. So he should say that a non-Jew paying back a loan should be prohibited before his holiday. אמר רב נחמן בר יצחק, הנח להלכות מועד, דכולהו מסר עכשיו, שמחה לאחר זמן. Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak says, no, you can't compare it there, because when it comes to the laws of holidays, even though it's painful during Chol HaMoed, but you're happy because you're preparing for the final Yom Tov. That's why it's allowed. And that's true regarding all things that one does on Chol HaMoed. During Chol HaMoed, you can go and do work in order to make the Yom Tov that comes afterwards happier. So that's a different case. It's not about the Chol HaMoed itself that's happy. You can distress yourself somewhat on Chol HaMoed in order to make Yom Tov happier. That's why that's permitted. But if it was, let's say, it was only Chol HaMoed, no, that itself is not called happiness. And therefore, when the non-Jew pays on the day before his holiday, he's only distressed, and the happiness that's going to come after doesn't count, because it's not leading up to something greater than that. Ravina Amar Goy Linyan Peraon Olam Meser. Ravina says no. Psychology of an idolater is that he's always distressed that he had to pay back, even after the fact, even many days after the fact. Oh, I can't believe I'm out that $1,000 that I had to pay back, and he keeps being distressed about it, and he's not happy he's not happy about it even after time, and that's why the Rabbi Yehuda says that one cannot receive payment from a non-Jew for a loan. One can receive payment from a non-Jew for a loan because he will be distressed forever about it. Whereas according to Tanna Kama, no, he's only distressed for a short time, but then he will be happy a little bit later on his holiday, and then that will inspire him to thank his God. Baruch Adonai Le'olam. Amen ve'amen.